Welcome to another deep dive with us. We're going to be talking about a really interesting topic today. It's about the spread of disinformation on social media, and specifically, we're going to be looking at Bangladesh, in the wake of all the political changes that have happened over there. And we've got this really fascinating study that we're going to be diving into. It's called The Anatomy of Disinformation on X, published by the Tech Global Institute. And it's got some pretty wild stuff in there. Like, imagine you're scrolling through your feed and you see this video. That's like claiming to show Sharia law being implemented in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of scary, right?
Yeah, it is just one example of the kind of stuff we're going to be looking at today. The political climate in Bangladesh has been pretty volatile, especially after the fall of the Awami League government back in August 2024.
Huge shift for Bangladesh. And what's really interesting is that this study, it found that 77% of the disinformation they analyzed was found on X. Like formerly Twitter.
Yeah, it just goes to show how influential these platforms are these days, particularly X. I mean, it's become a real battleground for information warfare.
For sure.
And this study really highlights that. They analyzed over 1,000 pieces of content, really meticulously cross-referencing everything with credible sources. And they were able to really expose these patterns and these tactics that are being used in this disinformation campaign.
It's like detective work.
Yeah,
we're trying to piece together
Yeah.
how these narratives are being constructed and then how they're being spread. And one of the things that really stood out to me was this huge surge of new accounts on X. They said there was like a 214% increase just between October and November alone.
Wow.
And a lot of them are even verified. Because of that paid verification system that X has,
Right.
it makes you wonder, what's the motivation behind creating all these accounts?
Well, the study seems to suggest that a good chunk of this activity is actually coordinated, pushing very specific narratives. They're all kind of singing the same tune, trying to create this illusion of widespread support. It's a classic example of how social media can be weaponized.
It's really unsettling when you think about it. It's like there's this hidden hand pulling the strings, trying to manipulate everything. And the study even mentions this specific account called Baba Benares that was flagged for spreading disinformation.
Yeah, Baba Benares is a perfect example of how these accounts gain traction. It was one of those new accounts that quickly got a huge following and became this hub for sharing disinformation. The content was often playing on people's anxieties and prejudices, using inflammatory language, distorting facts, just to create this sense of outrage and fear.
So it's not just about creating these fake accounts. It's about strategically crafting this content that really pushes people's buttons, hijacks their attention, and then ultimately sways their opinion.
Yeah, exactly. It's about exploiting those existing tensions and biases to manipulate people's perceptions.
And in the case of Bangladesh, the study shows that a lot of this disinformation is specifically targeting the Hindu minority.
Right. It's a systematic attempt to exploit those communal tensions. And what's even more concerning is that a lot of this activity seems to be coming from outside of Bangladesh.
Really?
Yeah, there are some indicators that point to potential foreign involvement in this disinformation campaign.
Wow, so they're trying to influence not just internal politics,
Yeah.
but also international perceptions of the country.
Exactly.
It's like a double whammy of disinformation.
Yeah, they're trying to destabilize Bangladesh and shape the global narrative at the same time.
That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the specific tactics they're using. What's in this disinformation toolkit?
Well, one of the most common tactics is distorting local events. To fit a predetermined narrative, they take real incidents, strip them of context, and then twist them to create this sense of fear and panic.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. There was this video that went viral on X, showing a man wielding a stick in a classroom at a medical college. And the captions claimed it was proof of Sharia law being implemented. And extremist groups taking over.
Whoa.
Yeah, pretty alarming stuff.
Definitely plays into those fears
Yeah.
about extremism and societal upheaval.
But here's the thing. The video was completely taken out of context. Fact checkers were able to debunk it pretty quickly. They found out the man was actually a mentally ill patient who had wandered into the classroom, no connection to extremist groups, no evidence of Sharia law being imposed, just a completely isolated incident that was twisted and manipulated.
So it's a reminder that even seemingly straightforward evidence can be manipulated. We always need to consider the source and look for verification from multiple trusted sources before jumping to conclusions.
Absolutely. And this manipulation of events ties into another tactic they're using, exaggerating the scale of violence. often fabricating claims about attacks against minorities to fuel this narrative of a Hindu genocide in Bangladesh.
It's just awful. Using people's fear and suffering to push a political agenda.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. And the study found numerous cases where incidents were either grossly exaggerated or completely made up. For instance, they cite a case where the deaths of 2 students were misrepresented as a targeted attack on Hindus, even though there was no evidence to support that claim.
Wow.
These kinds of fabrications prey on people's emotions, and they exploit those existing prejudices, making them incredibly effective in spreading fear and division.
It's scary how easily people can be manipulated, especially when those manipulations are playing on our deepest fears.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. But the more we're aware of these tactics, the better equipped we'll be to spot them and to counter them.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Exactly.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and dive even deeper into this disinformation toolkit. Stay with us.
And it makes it really hard to have like a reasoned debate or a critical thinking.
Yeah, because everyone's so emotional. It's like you're trying to have a conversation, but everything's just distorted.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the distortion of events. We've talked about the exaggeration of violence. What other tactics are they using?
Another common one is discrediting the government, the new interim government. They spread rumors and conspiracy theories about their alleged ties to extremist groups, basically trying to paint them as illegitimate or dangerous.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some of those things floating around online.
Yeah.
And a lot of times there's like no evidence to support them.
Right.
They're just trying to create suspicion.
Yeah.
And distrust.
Exactly. The study highlights a few specific examples of these allegations, all of which were debunked, but the damage is often already done. These accusations, even if they're proven false, can linger in the public consciousness and erode trust in institutions.
And it's not just rumors and conspiracy theories. They're also using deep fakes and cheap fakes to spread these claims.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other level of manipulation.
I mean, for those who don't know, deep fakes and cheap fakes are basically digitally manipulated videos or images that make it look like someone is saying or doing something that they never actually did.
And the technology is getting so sophisticated.
It's crazy.
It's getting really hard to tell what's real and what's fake.
It's like they're creating this alternate reality.
Yeah.
Where you can't even trust your own eyes.
It's incredibly dangerous. I mean, deepfakes can be used to smear reputations, manipulate elections, even incite violence.
It's a scary thought.
Oh.
Okay, so we've got the distortion, the exaggeration, the discrediting, and now deepfakes. What else is in this toolkit?
Well, there's one more tactic that's really sneaky. It's called astroturfing.
Astroturfing.
Yeah, imagine like a beautiful green lawn, lush, vibrant, and seemingly natural, but underneath the surface, it's all artificial, carefully constructed to create this illusion of grassroots support.
So it's like creating a fake crowd to cheer for something that nobody actually likes.
Exactly, making it seem like an idea or movement has widespread support, when in reality, it's all manufactured.
That's wild.
And in the case of Bangladesh, astroturfing has been used to create this illusion of a widespread movement for minority rights. They set up fake social media accounts, create fake petitions, basically manufacture online support for their narrative.
So they're hijacking legitimate concerns about minority rights to push their own divisive agenda.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder who's behind all of this. What's the end game here?
That's a really important question, and it gets to the heart of this disinformation campaign, the motivations and the potential impact. The study suggests that this campaign is likely aimed at destabilizing Bangladesh, exploiting those communal tensions to sow discord and undermine public trust in the government.
So it's about creating this narrative of chaos and instability.
Yeah, making it seem like Bangladesh is on the brink of collapse.
But why? What do they gain from that?
It's a complex question.
Yeah.
But one possibility is that this disinformation campaign is part of a broader strategy to damage Bangladesh's international reputation, deter foreign investment, and potentially even create a pretext for foreign intervention. It's not just about manipulating public opinion within Bangladesh. It's about shaping international perceptions of the country, influencing how the world views this nation.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. And this is where the role of mainstream media becomes really crucial. When seemingly credible news outlets amplify these false narratives, it gives them a veneer of legitimacy, and it makes them much harder to counter.
Yeah, because people are more likely to trust information that comes from a source they're familiar with.
Exactly. So when these outlets, often unknowingly, repeat or validate disinformation, it can have a huge impact on public perception.
It's like this ripple effect. Disinformation spreads on social media, gets picked up by mainstream media, and then gets amplified back to a wider audience.
Exactly. It becomes this vicious cycle that can be incredibly difficult to break.
So what can we do about it?
Well, the good news is we're not powerless. There are things we can do, both individually and collectively, to push back against these harmful narratives and reclaim control of our information landscape.
Okay, that's good to hear. I think we all crave a sense of agency in a world that often feels so overwhelming. So let's dive into those solutions. What can we do as individuals and as a society to combat this tidal wave of disinformation?
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming for sure. But, even small actions can make a difference. Like every time you share a piece of accurate information or you question a dubious source, you're helping to create a more resilient information ecosystem.
So it's about being more proactive, not just passively consuming whatever we see.
Exactly.
How do we do that in practice?
Well, let's start with individual responsibility. Think about it like this. You wouldn't share food with someone without checking if it was safe to eat right.
Right.
You'd look for signs of spoilage, check the expiration date, maybe even give it a sniff test. We need to bring that same level of scrutiny to the information we consume and share online.
So before hitting that share button, take a moment to consider the source. Is it a reputable news outlet, a respected researcher, or is it just some random account?
Exactly. And if something seems fishy, don't just scroll past it. Flag it or report it to the platform. Don't let disinformation have a free ride on your feed.
Okay, so check the source. Flag suspicious content. What about those algorithms? I know they can play a role in all of this, creating these echo chambers, where we only see information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Yeah, algorithms can definitely contribute to that problem. They're designed to keep us engaged, and they often do that by showing us more of what we've already liked or interacted with.
So how do we break free from those filter bubbles?
Be proactive. Seek out diverse sources of information. Don't just rely on one news outlet or social media platform. Challenge yourself to consider different viewpoints, even if they make you uncomfortable.
It's like expanding our palate, right? Trying new flavors.
Exactly.
Okay, so individual responsibility is key. But what about the role of institutions?
Institutions have a huge role to play as well. We need strong educational programs that teach media literacy and critical thinking skills, starting from a young age.
Yeah, I wish I'd learned more about that in school.
Me too. And it's not just about schools. Community organizations, libraries, even workplaces can offer programs and workshops on media literacy.
So it's about making media literacy a part of everyday life.
Exactly.
And what about governments? They have a lot of power to shape the information landscape.
Governments can definitely make a difference. They can promote transparency and accountability, support independent media, protect journalists, and enact laws against the deliberate spread of disinformation.
But we have to be careful about censorship.
But absolutely, it's a delicate balance, but there's a clear distinction between freedom of expression and the intentional spread of harmful falsehoods.
So it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
But it's one that we need to address.
Definitely. The stakes are high. But I'm optimistic. I think we have the tools and the collective intelligence to counter disinformation.
It's about being critical, being curious, being engaged.
Exactly.
Well said. It's a great note to end on. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the world of disinformation. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
And remember, never underestimate the power of truth.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.